ladies and gentlemen, for joining us in this very special webinar. On behalf of the Embassy of Brazil in New Delhi, the National Investment Promotion Agency, Invest India, and Startup India, a very warm welcome to the 5th India-Brazil Fintech webinar. This time, talking about neobanking and the online financial revolution they are making in our countries. I am Roberta Lima, Head of Science, Technology and Innovation Section at the Embassy of Brazil in New Delhi.
Good evening and namaste. I'm Shruti Chandra, representing Invest India, the National Investment Promotion and Facilitation Agency of Government of India, where I lead the BFSI sector. On behalf of both our teams, we welcome you all today to today's webinar on neobanking. Operating exclusively online, the neobanks have been fundamental in transforming the very notion of banking. Today, our aim will be to discuss how Indian and Brazilian startups are challenging the status quo and are striving to provide last-mile delivery of financial products to both businesses and individual consumers, and the crucial role these neobanks will play in furthering the financial inclusion agenda of emerging economies such as India and Brazil. To inaugurate our session today, we are extremely honored and privileged to have amongst us the Ambassador of Brazil to the Republic of India, His Excellency Mr. André the Lago. Welcome to the forum, Your Excellency, and we thank you for your gracious presence. We also have the Ambassador of India to the Federal Republic of Brazil, His Excellency Mr. Suresh Reddy. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us today, and welcome to the forum. We will also be joined by Mr. Varun Sood, Vice President in Invest India, who will be speaking on behalf of our CEO and Managing Director. Thank you so much, Varun, for joining us today. To begin our inaugural session, may I now please request His Excellency Mr. André Lago, Ambassador of Brazil to the Republic of India, to deliver his inaugural session.
Thank you very much to both moderators for the words. I would like to greet very enthusiastically my colleague Ambassador Reddy, with whom I've had the pleasure to interact quite often this month, and to Varun Sood, and thank again Invest India for its extraordinary presence in this relationship between Brazil and India, since even more since the signing of the agreement with APEC in January this year. I want to say hello to the panelists. I'm very excited that you are all participating, and all the viewers, hello from New Delhi. It is very inspiring for me that we've had a very successful series of virtual events on the subject of fintechs. The first one was the India-Brazil Fintech Conference in Mumbai last year that I went. And this year, because of the COVID situation, Embassy of Brazil and Invest India decided to organize a series of webinars on themes such as the post-COVID world, digital banking, open banking, agri-fintech, and now this last one on neobanking. At first impression, for traditional and old men like me, fintechs seem to be very futuristic and detached from the world that I know. But little by little, I'm learning a lot, and I have to say that it has attracted very significantly the attention of policymakers in Brazil, in India, and in most other countries, even more in developing countries, because they have allowed broader access to credit, to the development of strategies for financial inclusion, economic empowerment for small and medium enterprises, less concentration, more competition in the banking sector, and a wider range of options for the consumer. And I believe that we can see even financial relief for during this outbreak of COVID-19, which has been disbursed through the fintech sector. So another interesting aspect for me is is, of course, the technology. And in our world that is suffering so much from COVID, I think that technology has become more than ever an integral and essential part of our lives. And this platform in which we are sharing our thoughts today and others have become a presence and have changed a bit the way that we interact, even in diplomacy. So I'm very glad that this is happening also because India and Brazil are characterized by societies of great flexibility, great diversity, very open to change and to new ideas. So specifically about neobanks, which is our subject today, I think that I understand that the first ones were created very short time ago, 7 years ago, when 40% of Brazilians didn't have access to bank account. And since then, this number has decreased by half. So I'm very glad also on the progress that Brazil is doing because 7 out of 10 Brazilians are constantly online and 9 of the 10 internet users in Brazil access the web on a daily basis. So we are emerging, Brazil and India, as global leaders in the next generation of banks, where 100% online financial services will be the new normal. Neobanking has thrived in Brazil, which has a tech-savvy culture, with the help of smartphones, obviously, and low-cost services, and this is the same that is happening here in India. Today, there are 9 full-fledged neobanks in Brazil, while many others offer financial services and are in the process of becoming a neobank. In most cases, they started as digital branches of traditional financial institutions with banking permits of their own. I am very happy that this really, as I mentioned, has increased competitivity, and they are highly competitive and they are profitable. So I think that it is an extraordinary instrument to reach the 50 million Brazilians that still live without a bank account. So Brazil, we cannot forget, is the home of the largest digital-only bank in the world, a new bank with 25 million clients, which has, by the way, participated in 2 of our previous Fintech webinars. I'm very glad today that the Brazilian panelists, Pedro and André, by Xará, came not from the largest companies, but from very fast-rising startups with creative financial and banking solutions for the underbanked and the unbanked populations. I'm sure that the Brazilian and Indian panelists today will have a great debate with fresh insights. And I think that if we build that bridge between you, we want you to circulate in that bridge without us from now on. And I can only wish you the best possible debate. And thank you very much for participating today.
Thank you, sir. We're truly grateful to you for your inspiring presence, and thank you for your kind words. It is my privilege to now invite His Excellency Mr. Suresh K. Reddy, Ambassador of India to the Federal Republic of Brazil, to deliver his inaugural address. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Today I am speaking from the city of Porto Alegre. Ambassador André, my good friend, I came here yesterday and I've been meeting some industries. You'll be happy to know. And what is interesting is that one of that industry is directly related to the bricks and mortar industry of banking. So we spent almost 5 hours, I think, visiting the plant and having a lovely evening and discussing about the trends in banking and how it is going to be impacted by this digital revolution which is happening. Really. As Ambassador André was correctly mentioning, it's the story of financial inclusion. It's a story of economic empowerment. But importantly, it is a story of the new country which is being built. It's a new India which is being built. It's a new Brazil which is being built. And it is a new world of opportunities for partnerships which is being created. And so from that perspective, I would like to really compliment the Invest India and Apex Brazil for coming together, organizing so many events, for helping to create and identify synergies. And also, I would like to really appreciate the gap which is being filled, the efforts being made to fill the gap. Because in my 3 months, what I find here is that there's a lot of, what should I say, not a good, there's not a, what do you call it, a good understanding of what is happening in India, really, in terms of this digital revolution. And so similarly in India also, we do not really have a good understanding of what is happening in Brazil. And so again, I would like to compliment the Invest India and Apex Brazil for creating these platforms where we can develop a better understanding of each other, of what we can bring to the table, as we say. But really, it's a wonderful set of panelists. I think when Ambassador André, my good friend, when he spoke on behalf of both of us in terms of how we approach this event and the idea behind these events and what we hope to achieve from these events. But it's a great set of panelists. I believe they are the future. Mentioned the leaders of the new India which is being built, really, the leaders of the new Brazil which is being built. And we look forward to taking it even more, using you to build a stronger partnership between India and Brazil. Having said that, one area which I like to also talk about is in addition to the financial inclusion and other related, what should I say, the services for the person in the street, the clients. But I'm not sure how much of service is being rendered to the industry per se. Because if I'm looking at promoting commercial linkages between India and Brazil, for me, the digital banking would be a natural partner in my process. But I'm not really clear as to how much of support the digital banking can provide for promoting this commercial income in the exchanges. Because, like, if I want a DD to be made, for example, or if I want to give some performance guarantee, if I want to do some whatever banking transaction relating to a commercial exchange, how can the digital banks enable that? How can they make it more simpler? How can they make it more speedier? And how can they make it more user-friendly for the business so that it will actually reduce the cost of doing business? Today, cost of banking is reduced quite dramatically because of, again, this digital banking. But at the same time, the cost of doing business for the industry, how can we reduce that also? That is something which I like to, for the leaders to think about and to see how we can take this process forward. With this, I'll thank you again for inviting me to the show.
Thank you, sir, for your very valuable insights and for blessing the webinar with your affirmative words. May I now please request Mr. Varun Sood for a few words on India's financial services ecosystem and the growth India has observed since 2015. All yours, Varun. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shruti. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for this particular opportunity. Our CEO really wanted to be part of this discussion, but unfortunately, because his health, he couldn't make it. So, we are delighted to be part of this. And thank you, His Excellency, Mr. Lago, and His Excellency, Mr. Reddy, for the great, insights about the discussions on India and Brazil, especially on the fintech side. Today, I basically wanted to touch upon, the opportunities that India offers in the fintech space and how these 4 webinars that we have done in the past, especially related to, post-COVID pandemic and talking about digital payments, open banking technologies, agri-fintech, and today the Niyo banking is something which is very interesting as well. There's a lot of opportunities and, common interests and values and shared ideals between the 2 countries. And with the whole strong economic partnership that we've seen, which has resulted in bilateral trade and investments across sectors, is giving a big impetus to India-Brazil growth story altogether. In the fintech growth drivers, the key element that I wanted to basically touch upon, where India offers a huge opportunity, is the new banking scenario, where a lot of contactless shift has been happening in the services. Whereas earlier we used to focus on the retail banking, but now a lot of this work is done through apps. Like we have the UPI payment app, which has been used for all transactions during most of the during the pandemic itself. The ease of use of this particular application, and then the kind of access that it provides, still has a huge significance, and brings in a lot of opportunities for new markets to add up. In India, we've got around 650 million subscribers, which are there using data and smartphones, and we've got 1.2 billion subscribers. So leveraging this technology in bringing the unbanked to the banking system altogether could be very useful as well. What I want to close with is that there's huge significance of what India and Brazil can together do, and we want the panelists and the discussions to focus on how can we leverage the technology platforms, the young entrepreneurs, the established chains, and how can we have cross linkages between multiple stakeholders and ensure that we come out with some innovative solutions to existing challenges on both the sides. With this, I would like to thank the organizers and the team in presenting this opportunity to come and address this particular webinar. Thank you so much. Shruti, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sood and your excellencies. Can you hear me? Ambassadors Reddy and Lago, for sharing observations and insights on your invaluable experiences in the two countries, and for joining us today in this exchange of ideas, opinions, and thoughts. Your enlightening insights have set the context perfectly well in the following panel discussion. We have today members from the neobanking ecosystem, interestingly representing all brands of spectrum from the fintech domain, to discuss the current and future role of neobanking in both markets. We will also explore how the Brazilian and Indian fintechs are helping our countries to navigate through the current pandemic, and what would be the silver lining opportunities emerging from the industry. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. André Cunha, Chief Executive Officer and founder of Ewally, which developed and operates a platform for mobile payments. The Ewally platform also offers a variety of financial services and mobile wallets. It targets industry verticals embedded in market niches where its unique solutions have the most impact. André will tell us on how Ewally is leapfrogging by associating with other financial institutions and
I think we may have lost Roberta, but I will. Sorry, Your Excellency, I think you're saying something, but you're on mute. I'll just take it from there. Sorry, I think Roberta's back. So go ahead, Roberta.
I think now I am back. I don't know to where. I think I presented André, right?
Yes.
So I now go to Pedro Gerhardt, partner and advisor for Banco Maré, which offers a simple financial operation platform aimed at reaching classes C, D, and E, more specifically the unbanked and residents of risky areas and lower class communities. Besides partnering with Bank, Pedro works in the impact investment and social finance market, which experience ranging from multinationals to startup launches. Over to you, Shruti.
Thank you. Welcome to the Brazilian panelists. From the India side, we are honored to have with us Mr. Shashank Kumar, co-founder and CTO of Razorpay. Shashank started Razorpay along with Mr. Harshal Mathur with the vision and conviction of revolutionizing digital payment systems, use and pervasiveness in India. Founded in 2014, Razorpay rebranded itself in 2017 as Razorpay 2.0 and has recently launched its new banking platform, RazorX. Welcome, Shashank. Thank you so much for joining us today. Secondly, we have Mr. Vinay Bagri, co-founder and CEO of Niyo. Mr. Vijay Bagri is the co-founder and CEO of Niyo Solutions. Niyo is India's first and largest neobank challenger bank. Vijay has been recognized from multiple reputable industry and media platforms, both in India and globally, and is one of the leading fintech influencers in India and an authority on neobanking solutions in India. Thank you so much, Vinay, for joining us, and welcome to the forum. Before we begin, I just wanted to lay down the housekeeping rules for the delegates. I would like to inform the audience that you can post your questions for our panelists during the duration of the discussion, and we will be picking up these questions during the dedicated Q&A session that will take place at the end of the webinar. To do so, please just write your questions in the chat boxes of the platforms you are viewing this on, and our team will pick this up. We will now commence with the panel discussion. And my first question is addressed to Dr. André. Dr. André, in the previous installments of this series, we've had the opportunity to discuss and learn about digital payments, open banking, and agri-financing. In your opinion, how would recent initiatives by the Brazilian Central Bank, like an open banking framework, augur for the development of neobanking sector in Brazil as a whole?
Well, I start off, I'm delighted to be here, to be part in this forum. It's very interesting subjects that we breathe this subject every day. I will start saying that the Brazilian Central Bank has done an incredible job developing what I consider one of the most modern regulations in the world. If you go back a few years, usually regulation lags technology. Technology is always ahead of the regulation. And in the past, even in Brazil and other countries, you developed the technology, but you could not use it fully because the regulation was way behind. In Brazil, in the last few years, central bank, since the piece of regulation on the digital accounts, what offered the new banks was dated in 2013. The central bank is studying all the best practices around the world and developed, even we are now talking about sandboxes to test in a more controlled environment some new products and some new services. So I just said all this to set an example of how this can proper the new banks and the new financial services. And I take this opportunity also to take a more provocative tone here and say, what is the word new bank? New bank is not a new bank that is going to be formed, a smaller one that is based on technologies and these new platforms. I think a new bank is that any company, any organization that has a massive number of users or customers or members, they can have their own bank now. And that's how we operate. We have our platform, what we call white label, that any mass retailer can have its own bank. So all these new regulations and abilities that the central bank opened to the society promotes not only financial inclusion, financial empowerment of the population, but also takes the banking services to the user level. Now you can have your own bank. And in the future, you will be your own bank. So instead of having, like today, 5 or 6 largest banks in Brazil, almost every citizen can have its own bank. And I stay here.
Great. Thank you so much, sir, for your insights. This was very informative. Roberta, over to you for the next question.
Razorpay. So, Shashank, in most of the discussions earlier, we have seen how fintechs are innovating more and are working a large number of product and service offerings for individual customers. And now banking are often liberally defined as banks for the digital people. Does Razorpay X believe so too? And how similar or different is it when we put into the perspective of business to business now banking?
Sorry, Shashank, you're on mute. You just have to unmute your phone.
Sorry. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Roberta. The whole neobanking phenomenon is quite new in the Indian industry, right? But the overall fintech as a movement has started, quite a few years back, and there are now a lot of fintech companies operating in India and helping with the last mile delivery of services. What I believe very strongly, right, the way banking ecosystem has developed in last few decades, right, Indian banks, due to their sheer size and breadth of operation, have a responsibility to serve everyone in the country that is there. They are like the train rails that crisscross India from one city to another that is there, right? But today, if you look at today's scenario, the growth of mobile and internet has put a supercomputer in everyone's hands that is there. And there are a lot of internet platforms that have come up in last few years where you are able to reach millions of consumers on a daily basis. And what the neobanks today are able to differentiate and provide is very personalized banking services and go with the last mile delivery instead of just providing a one size fits all banking to every sector, right? And in the fintech world here, every fintech or every neobank has broken down that customer segment, either and targeting of those financial services to that customer segment, say either to blue collar workers or to global citizens or to small and medium businesses or to farmers. And what we believe now is that the financial services need to be tailor made to those segments so that we can not only further financial inclusion but also drive significant amount of financial education. At Razorpay X specifically, our belief is that having a bank account today is a very basic need. It's just the start of a person's or an entity's financial journey. If I look at it, from a small business perspective, even if you are an entrepreneur and have, let's say, 10 or 50 or 100 employees on payroll, you still have a variety of financial activities that you need to perform on a regular basis, say from payroll to vendor and supplier payments, taxation. You need to take care of your compliance posture. You need to think through about fundraising either through credit or through any other channel that is there. And at the same time, you need to worry about your growth and financial health of the business as well. Now, these separate set of activities take a significant amount of time for any business to perform. And as part of that, what happens for a small business which anyway already has scarcity of resources, they need to divert significant amount of their attention to these activities instead of focusing on running their business and focusing on their growth. And that is where our neobanking platform Razorpay X comes into picture, where we say that look, we want to marry the underlying financial and banking infrastructure that exists in the country with the next set of services, financial services for these businesses, such that they don't need to spend their time on the financial operations, which can be done very smoothly, very easily, with access to a mobile, with access to internet in a small amount of time. And so we give that time and give that money back to the business so that they can go and focus on what they do best, right? and we take care of their financial education. We take care of driving financial inclusion deeper in the country. And by delivery of these focused financial services, we are able to bring a lot more businesses into the formal financial ambit of the country, and thereby able to drive much more growth that is there for India to achieve the growth that it's aiming for for next few years. It's extremely important that the whole business community kind of goes digital and uses the latest tools that are available, because that is our fundamental belief that we'll be able to significantly improve the productivity of the businesses themselves through the Niyo banking platform, and be able to transform businesses in India towards the next phase of growth.
Thank you very much, Shashank. Really interesting points you have raised about the singularities of the neo-banking services in India, and I think there are many possible parallels with Brazilian reality. All yours, Shruti.
Thank you, Roberta. My next question is to Pedro. Pedro, since Banco Maré is one of the few neobanks using blockchain technology for furthering financial inclusion, what has been your experience so far, and how do you envision this technology to financially empower the unbanked population of the world?
First of all, good morning to everyone in Brazil, and good afternoon to everyone in India. I'm very honored to be here, and it's a really good initiation for you guys to be promoting this. It's a great discussion, and that's a great question as well. As you all know, blockchain is a distributed, decentralized ledger that transforms authority to a virtual network. Such a structure provides a indestructible and a digital record in actions that actually allows you to more transparency, and at the same time it can guarantee you a high level of security. But it also has a especially important role as it reduces all the operational costs. It's a really important issue, and once you can replace the act of several intermediaries, such as transaction and complete records, you can lower your costs and you can reach way more people like that. And talking about the vision, this kind of technology allows you to access populations with lower purchasing power once you can operate in lower costs. So that's the big importance. And we believe the future of blockchain is actually to ensure the data security for new population that is still very vulnerable. And we strongly believe the future will allow us to have a digital ID as a universal ID, so people can be reached from anywhere in the world. So help can come from anywhere. And today, more and more people get access to smartphones, as our ambassador said, so around the globe. So it's actually getting easier and easier to access those kind of technologies. And a great deal is also that the user being able to control his own data. As my friend said here as well, Shashank, everyone can become a bank. And with everyone controlling their own data and information, it will facilitate communication and perhaps generate new sources of income for those populations.
Great. Thank you so much, Pedro, for your insights on this new technology. And clearly, this is going to disrupt the industry as we know it. And it is the future for emerging economies such as ours. Thank you so much for joining us today. Roberta, all yours.
Thank you. So, and I go now to Niyo. Vinay, neobanks are definitely not doing banking as usual, and most of them are positioning themselves as a modern and customer-focused alternative. However, with traditional banks increasingly developing their own digital banks, how opportune are these developments? I mean, in what degree of partnership between neo and digital banks and the traditional banks can be actually fruitful and move forward?
Yeah, thanks, Roberta, for your question. If you look at partnership between digital bank and traditional banks, especially from an Indian context, it is almost mandatory if you want to operate a new bank in India to do in partnership with the bank. The format is that. Also, what happens is that it allows the traditional bank to take care of the regulatory challenges which are there, whereas the digital partner, like somebody like us, can focus more on customers and customer journeys and how to reduce cost. Coming to Pedro's point, especially if you have to go to a sector which is on the lower end of the pyramid, if you have to really look at financial inclusion, one of the very important aspects is that can you deliver banking at a cost which is where you can make profit in a segment which is really low income. And that's where the partnership between bank and a fintech becomes extremely critical, that we can bring in new technologies to reduce cost. The digital bank can bring the UI, the understanding of the customer. For example, our product comes into for customers who are illiterate, and whereas the traditional banks can come in and bring in their capability of regulation and licenses, etc. So put together, it becomes a very symbiotic relation where we use the regulatory understanding of a partner bank and combine it with digital prowess of modern players, and then put this together to release a co-branded product which can then address specific segments of the society, especially very powerful the moment you go to low income group, because then not only you can take banking, but along with the app, you can take insurance, you can take pocket size wealth management products which are specifically designed for this segment, and that way contribute to national financial inclusion.
Sorry, Roberta, you're on mute.
Roberta, you're on mute.
Now it's okay.
Mute, yeah.
Thank you, Vinay. Indeed, you brought some food for thought on this partnership, and specifically on the ways you can profit from low-income population, how we move forward on this relation between the traditional banks and the fintechs, the neobanks. So, Shruti, I pass to you.
Thank you so much, Roberta. Dr. André, my next question for the second round is a majority of work fintechs do adds up in one direction, which is of financial inclusion and making finance more inclusive than it is currently. 1.7 billion people worldwide do not have bank accounts. The share of unbanked population is higher in emerging economies, unfortunately, such as India and Brazil, than their developed counterparts. What insights do you think the Brazilian neobanking experience can offer to other countries facing similar challenges?
Well, first again, I'll take Roberta's words like food for thought, and I'll bring another provocative issue here. Having unbanked population is not a privilege of Brazil, India, and other emerging markets, but even in very developed territories like the US, the unbanked population can reach over 70 million people. It's an amazing number and a percentage of the population. And now if you go to Europe, with the recent immigrant flows into Europe and the pandemic, the unemployment, the number of unbanked in Europe is also huge compared to the percentage of the population. So, given that, in Brazil, the ambassador just mentioned that a few years ago, 40% of the adult financially active population had no bank account. Brazil is over 200 million, so a quick calculation is we are talking about 80 million people, and now reduced to half of that with the new banks and the new initiatives. So we are talking about 20 million people without a bank account in Brazil. And then if you consider those that are not economically active, you know, it still is dozens of millions of people without a bank account. In that regard, we see that all these new initiatives, they bring some relief for this population that is in the bottom of the pyramid. And being excluded of the financial system is what in sociology is called one of the poverty traps. You know, there are many, this is not a forum to get into that, but we see that when we bring some financial inclusion to this population, is a huge relief, and also an increase of their personal income. All this can be transported to all the developed markets as well, US and Europe and so on and so forth. So we see many of the opportunities that we find a localized solution in Brazil can be applied not only to India, but to many other countries, and to be very simplistic, in Latin America that has some of the same culture. One factor that we haven't touched is the culture difference between all these countries and how they deal with money and how the day-to-day transactions are done. Brazil is a very developed society for electronic payments. The card industry is very developed in Brazil. Many people ask how China now has, you know, this QR code payments and how this thing has not just launched in Brazil. And the answer is that Brazil has a very mature card industry. So people are used to use cards since the 80s. And China had to leapfrog and all the card and conventional financial industry. But in that sense, all these new developments that we are doing here, and I go further saying that what from my last talk is that we can leverage all these platforms in a way that any company, anyone can launch its own bank. And this is a good example of what can be done elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your insights. And, you know, it's very interesting to learn, you know, the points that you mentioned that, you know, banking the unbanked is the need of the hour globally. And all these solutions that are coming up are, you know, can be localized to other markets as well. Of course, keeping in mind the cultural aspects of the economy as well. Thank you so much. Roberta, over to you.
Thank you. Now I go to Razorpay and I ask Shashank about the following. In the last few years, the new banks have been established and conceptualized to create a frictionless digital experience. Razorpay X has a similar mission. Breaking down your vision, what are the current focus areas of the company, and what's your opinion on this recent moves?
So I think recently, for past 1.5 years, we have been extremely focused on building a Niyo banking platform, which is extremely seamless for businesses to operate. A platform which businesses can hold as an example of what is possible when when we are in the process of transforming banking from a traditional brick and mortar and relationship based world to a more mobile first, cloud first kind of environment. And we are extremely focused for next 1.5 to 2 years that banking itself should feel indistinguishable for businesses when they are going through their day-to-day active financial activities that are there, and it should be available at the tap of the mobile, at the tap of the fingertips, instead of them needing to call a person or needing to call, interface with multiple folks from the industry just to get very, very simple things done. In fact, if you look at it, today's entrepreneurs or today's business owners, right, are already growing up on a diet of significant amount of information technology, right? On the consumer side, platforms like WhatsApp or Facebook or many such other things that have come up, right, have helped people to start using internet in their day-to-day lives, right? But we see that the same amount of rigor or same amount of technology has not permeated their financial world that is there, right? And you still don't, even for simple things like knowing what is my cash burn, what is my revenue, you still need to wait or interface with your finance folks or with your chartered accountant or taxation expert to kind of understand what is the financial health of your business. Our focus is that we have this data available with businesses every second that is there, so that they can make decisions about their own businesses way, way faster. That is one. I think the second most important focus area for us is that from an operations perspective, we want to be the CFO of a small business, right? So we want to be the one hub, one dashboard that a business can use to perform any kind of financial function that is there, and they don't need to run in 5 different directions or interact with five different people to any kind of operational process that they need to think through for money movement perspective, right? So be it related to you have to onboard your vendors, you have to process your payroll, you have to comply with the local rules that are there from local government rules that are there from a compliance perspective. All of these financial aspects should be something that is extremely simple, and you should not need to lose your sleep over this, right? If we are able to achieve these 2 objectives, I think we'll be able to simplify financial lives of a lot more businesses in India in next 5 years than it's been possible to do so in let's imagine, let's say last 10 to 20 years for these SMEs, right? And in this process, we are partnering with multiple firms that are there, be the regulator, be the financial firms of the country that are there, and also with a lot of I would say business platforms that exist in the country to kind of help reach these businesses at the point of their existence, instead of just trying to onboard them on our platform one by one, right? Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Shashank. Interesting views you have shared on this point. I hope these advancements and this simplification will soon become a common standard in our digital lives. Over to you, Shruti.
Thank you, Roberta. Pedro, this is for you. Many countries around the world, including Brazil, are exploring the idea of having an official cryptocurrency. As Banco Maré has developed its own cryptocurrency called Palafita. In your opinion, how can cryptocurrencies aid in bringing into fold the unserved population, both in Brazil and India?
All right. So, well, we approach this point in 2 interesting ways, in my opinion. First, we can use the example of remittances. Immigrant remittance today represent one of the most important financial flows for developing countries, such as Brazil and India. But especially today, we can see that in Africa and Asia. They contribute to improve the living conditions of so many families who live in such extreme poverty, supporting the development of the most backwards economies. So impacting directly on poor families, which means that it becomes a very important issue. So, but the costing of sending this money abroad is still so high, and the fees charged by the money transfer agencies are so expensive, and these costs are passed on to the already fragile population. So it's a really bad cycle that we can see here. With the advent of blockchain, in our opinion, several companies and startups have begun adopting cryptocurrencies, trying to solve to these multiple issues, such as high transfer costs and the limitation money distribution methods, and the limited brand options, limited ways to deal with money, and etc. We are talking here about a solution that can reach remote areas of Brazil and India. And there are areas where normal bank just cannot access in those kind of places. And secondly, they can also work as a complementary way with the currencies of government today and their benefits, exchanging service, for example, which completely turns the economy around, and it can bring access and resources from other countries. So if a government distributes resources within blockchain platforms, it can manage it, and they can allocate all the resources more accurately and clearly. It can also give you a kind of transparency that's it's a huge problem for many developing countries. It can actually fight problems like corruption and many social distribution issues that we have around the world. So here in Banco Maré as well, we developed like a way during this pandemic that it's actually measuring how vulnerable are people by our social score measuring to distribute the resources well. So like if we can get together with the big companies and the government, for example, using blockchain, we can give totally transparency and follow the money way to see how the money is going, or any kind of resources going, where they are going, and how they are actually affecting people and the population. So it becomes way more clear, and it's gonna reach you know, all the kind of places.
Thank you so much, Pedro, for insights. And clearly, this technology is the need for the hour, because not only will it help individuals, but it will also help the governments ensure that they can serve the populations even better. And that means that the money goes to the right people. So thank you so much for your insights. Over to you, Roberta, for the next question.
Thank you. So, Niyo, Vinay, as you said earlier, a new bank in India is ought to partner with a traditional bank, which is the one that has the license given by the Reserve Bank of India, and it's regulated by it. So how new banks convince customers that they are different from the traditional banks they have partnered with?
Robert, as I mentioned earlier, from a customer's perspective, it is what value a neobank can add, which is different. What proposition it can bring to the table, which is beneficial for a customer, which is different from a traditional bank. To give you a small example, so one of the segments we operate in is international travel. So what we try and do, for example, is on one hand, we bring in banking services with our partner banks, and then on the other hand, we also add travel related features to the same product. So from a customer's perspective, he can use the product, for example, if he's in Paris, not only to buy stuff, but also, the app will automatically tell him that it seems that Eiffel Tower, there's a big line. Why don't you, kind of buy a ticket? And he can buy the ticket on the same mobile app and cut the line and go straight away. So these kind of innovations, when you bring in, you don't need to convince the customer. They're automatically convinced that it is more user friendly, more researched and more thought through in terms of customer interactions than what a traditional bank would typically offer.
Okay, thank you very much. This is indeed an admirable new world for all of us in the banking system and for the clients. So over to you, Shruti.
Thank you. Dr. André, this question is for you. In the current scenario, what are the major challenges that still remain to be tackled in furthering the financial inclusion agenda that Brazil has, and and thus can serve as opportunities for future domestic and international fintechs to foray into the Brazilian market?
Mhm. Well, when you operate a new bank or a company like this, that you go after the end user, one thing that shines out is one problem that I believe, from what I read, that India has tackled in a much better way, and it is the personal identification. In order for you to offer a user, whatever the user is, a company or an individual, is necessary to identify this person. And then when you are in this process, if you take, for example, Brazil, with over 20 states, each state has their own identification system. And then this identification system changes along the time. So if you take a particular state and try to identify a person whose ID was issued in the 80s, you have to verify if that's correct or not. It's a compliance item. You have to do the full KYC of the customer. And we, day to day, we notice that that is still a challenge to promote this financial inclusion, the adoption of the services, and spread out the application and to make this onboarding seamless. So I believe this is a big hurdle in the process. Also, for you to do the full KYC, you have to have all the tools. And I think in the question that you asked, it's a big opportunity for other companies and to do a cross-border cooperation. The other item that I believe is becoming more important is compliance, and also the compliance costs to all this fintech ecosystem. The banks, they have that huge capital, they have decades, centuries of profitable operation, and for this new fintech to be in compliance with all the regulators, and now with the data protection laws, do all the anti-money laundering policies, is very costly. And some of these small companies don't have the means to do it and to stay in compliance. And this other item that I mentioned, the anti-money laundering, is becoming every day more important. You mentioned, and Pedro discussed a lot about the new blockchain and DLT technologies. And although that, of course, eases cross-border transactions and can lower the cost to the end user, but it still remains this fear of money laundering. So I think this whole system, although they are hurdles in the ecosystem, but also they present huge opportunities for new entrants.
Thank you so much, sir, for your inputs. And clearly, there's challenges also mean opportunities, and startups from both countries can learn a lot from each other. And hopefully, this webinar will also pave the way for future collaborations, where both countries can learn from each other and develop new technologies. Roberta, over to you for the next question.
Shruti, I think she's got logged out.
Okay, great. So if I may, then I'll just go on to Shashank for the next question. Shashank, how has India's technology ecosystem enabled you to build Razorpay X in ways that would not have been possible a decade ago? And what are your views on India's financial ecosystem and capabilities vis-a-vis other major economies? And what other exciting developments do you foresee for India?
I think with the few key moments that have happened in past decade, right? One of them being the demonetization, second being the whole geo movement that has happened, right? I think the biggest and the most positive aspect that has happened is that we are seeing an incredible penetration of internet and mobile in the country, right? Which is opening up a lot of opportunities that were inherently not present about a decade ago. Second, I think with the whole movement of startup ecosystem in the country, the way the startup ecosystem has been flourishing, with Flipkart, making e-commerce mainstream, right? With other simple apps, let's say Uber or Swiggy, making some of these transportation and other things via mobile really mainstream. It has helped attract a lot of talent in the ecosystem that understands how to build these services for the consumers today way better than what we could have imagined it to have happened, let's say 10 to 20 years ago. That is there, right? And in some sense, progress of these things has also helped India attract and retain a lot of talent and give a lot of growth opportunities in the country, which were kind of not present to that extent some time ago. And because of all this today, right, we are seeing a good amount of experimentation and mushrooming of fintech ecosystem in the country, where we are seeing these experiments happening on a day-to-day basis. How do I give you insurance in few cents, for example, instead of instead of in dollars? That is there, right? How can I give you some sort of protection against frauds very, very easily, against you getting duped and suffering through financial pain in life? That is there, right? So all these experimentations have become possible today and will keep on evolving as time goes on, right? So what we have been focusing on recently is that with the amount of data that is becoming available with digitization is significantly way more than what anyone could have imagined few years ago. And it's a very new trend, and it's a very exciting trend as well, because having availability of that kind of data today makes some of these things possible, that just having this data available today, right, helps us understand businesses and consumers in various more dimensions than what was possible before, right? And I think for the growth of the country, right, for the growth of businesses, having availability of credit is significantly more important going forward than what has been there. And we already know that there's significant credit gap that exists in the country, be it for consumers or for SMEs that are there, right? So one of the trends that I'm really excited about in next 3 to 4 years or 5 years is just some various forms of cash flow based lending, right, where you have these data points that are available at your fingertips, even though you don't have formal financial profile or formal credit bureau that kind of makes this data available to you. But these alternate signals will help fintech firms and neobanks underwrite businesses and consumers in various new ways that will unlock a significant amount of new credit for the industry and will help propel the growth, right? So we are in general working with the ecosystem to push policy on that front that is there, right? And not just from a technology perspective, but both from a neobanking and credit perspective, that how do we take the next leap and bring down the cost of these financial services significantly using technology which is already there today, right? But we also need to align from the right policy perspective, whether it's the neobanking policy or whether it's the credit policy, and also align significantly that the usage of new technology can happen in a very seamless, continuous way, instead of us going back regularly to the regulator asking for more such things. As as André had referred to previously, it's extremely important that regulation and technology kind of goes hand in hand and not leave one behind the other, and that is there.
Thank you so much, Shashank, for your very valuable insights. It's given us a very good idea of where India is currently and where it's headed. And clearly, data is the new oil, and will be very important especially for this segment in the future. I'll go on to the next question, which is for Pedro. Pedro, like with several new banks in India, Banco Maré app-based services are supplemented with local presence through kiosks or local shops that offer Banco Maré services and provide customer support. In the new normal, how are these services being recalibrated to minimize social contact while at the same time ensuring seamless delivery of financial products to customers like before?
Great question again. The way here is more than ever digitalization of money. I think we cannot escape from that. I heard a lot of knowledge about and on how the perspective of new banks were not great. Once, for example, the postal would seek out for safe havens and all those kind of things. But what I saw was entirely different. Somehow it seems that we were more prepared than the regular banks. And I mean, more than the financial market as well. And it's true that community areas we have kiosks, and they play a very important role as a brand and as a safe place to more worried people. But the pandemic accelerated the virtual adoption of our services, and the contactless payment methods had a huge increase. And of course, we made sure we were attending all the extra virtual demands. We also took some extra measures as well, as our agents went door to door, so that people did not have to go to the street, especially the people in risk groups. We strongly took use of our social media tools, and we contact them through it, such as WhatsApp and Facebook. That's one of our partners. But the key thing that happened was that we as a brand, we were very strong as the beginning of the pandemic as a very strong brand in inclusion and finding ways to give resources to the people that really need it. So a lot of the players from the market came to us trying to find solutions to reach out those people. So our demand, for example, for microcredit increased, and we developed more important partnerships in these areas with companies that provide these services. So that was a huge deal for us. And Brazil also had an incredible movement for destinations. And so we started to develop, as I said before, our social score. That's just explain to you guys. It's a SDK2, which allows you to predict the vulnerability of a certain person. And within this new line of products and services are rising so many new products and services for us that we can not only give financial resources for the people in need, but we can also, if they need food, or if they need education, or if they need health care, like we are out there find partnerships and important ways to provide those kind of things for the population. So I think the key things here, just to sum up, is we reinvent ourselves, and since we were born trying to find and adapt ourselves to resolve the solutions to resolve the problems of the more vulnerable people. We fast adopt the pandemic situation, and we overcome the obstacles, and we are reaching them, and some kind of how we are helping more than we expecting we would.
Great. Thank you so much, Pedro, and and thank you for the insights. Clearly, it was your vision and focus on innovation which enabled you to do much more and be more proactive. So that's very good to learn, and I'm sure there are a lot of learnings from that as well. Roberta, over to you for the next question.
Thank you, Shruti. Now I go to Niyo again, and I ask you one major factor for customers while connecting to or associating with a bank is trust. Another is seriousness. Traditionally, a customer is more probable to transact with a banker in suite than in wearing a t-shirt or a pair of jeans. So how is the status quo being redefined by the new banks? And what are the new trends coming out of this?
Yeah, Roberta, thanks. It's a very interesting question. But actually, things are just the opposite. So, there was a joke which used to go around when I used to be like a traditional banker, that if anybody is coming to you in a pinstripe suit, check your wallet. Mostly it'll be gone by the time he's gone. So if anything, seriousness or, bankers in suit are perceived as dangerous as lawyers. So it's actually good that the modern bankers are in t-shirt and jeans. And across the world, if you look at New Bank, you look at David, Christina, Edward. Those guys are more like rock stars than bankers. Our own Pedro here. So similarly, you go to Valentine of N26. The guy almost looks like Ashton Kutcher. So these guys have really transformed the way people look at banking. They look at banking, especially from Neo Bank, to be more fun, more transparent, more open, more like a common person. So you will not see a common person roaming around in suits. So why should your banker roam around in suits? So I think actually not being in suit is an advantage to a neobank and not a disadvantage, the way I look at it.
Thank you very much, Vinay. Indeed, we enjoy very much when we talk at the same level with people. So I guess that works very well in this new way of doing bank. And I do hope this fashion also comes to the diplomatic arena. I don't suffer that much, but I know my male colleagues do suffer of wearing suits, especially when we have warm weather, as we have it in Brazil and India. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Over to you, Shruti.
Thank you, Roberta. Now we have a general question from the audience, which is open to all panelists, and you can go one by one, or you can let me know whoever wants to take it. How has the new banking experience changed during the pandemic times, especially for the last mile citizens? So maybe I can start with Dr. André, and then we can move to all the panelists. Or if anyone specifically wants to take it.
I'll be very fast. I know the time is passing fast. I'll do that with an example. There was the day when we went into into isolation in Brazil. Remember clearly. From one day, everything was normal, to the next day, everything was isolated. And one of mass retailer faced a huge challenge, because now all the purchases for groceries and stuff had to be delivered to homes. And the old folks, they have no attachment to technology, to gadgets, apps and stuff. And how would they pay? They are isolated. They couldn't go to the door and pay with their credit card and touch the MPOS. It's a challenge there. And then this retailer asked us if we had a solution. Months ago, we had developed like a very agnostic payment link that we didn't find any use for it. So it fall into usage. And all of a sudden, that was the only solution available to be implemented in a few hours that would allow old folks to pay remotely for their groceries. And from one day to another, all the payments in that category was done through this payment link. So it's just a small example how the pandemic, took things that had been unthoughtable or unusable, and all of a sudden, majority of the population started using it, and it proper the new banks, these new payment and financial services, months or years ahead, things that were unthinkable. And if the society and the world had not experienced this pandemic, probably would be much longer the time for adoption of this new technology.
Thank you, sir. And clearly technology, it's unprecedented times, and it's during these times that new technologies, get revolutionized. Pedro, Vinay, Shashank, if any of you want to take this up, please let me know.
I can say a few words really fast, if I may. The great thing here for us was connection and very early adoption and adaptation for everything that happened as well. But something interesting happened here because Maré, Banco Maré, it's a bank that was born inside the communities, and people inside the communities they are very I don't want to use I don't use the word shy, but they are more suspect about everything. So the kioscos way, it was more interesting for many people because they were actually worried, like they have so low resources, so they wanna look eye to eye to the people that are gonna do the transactions, are gonna accept the payment, or gonna put phone recharges and all those kind of services that we provide inside the kiosks in the favelas. That they before the pandemic started, they wanted to make sure everything was within their eyes. But with the pandemic strike in Brazil, as André said, it was just like this. One day was everything normal, and the next day no one could leave the houses. I think people started to trust more in the new banks, such as Banco Maré, and was incredible the way how they communicated with us through social medias and all the kind of tools that I mentioned before. And we saw like actually increasing the contactless payments, of course, but not only the contactless payments. We saw a rising of payments at all. Like people that took like didn't want to pay only on Banco Maré, but like took 4 or 5 buses to pay in another agents. They become like they saw them in a situation that they had to trust. The new banks, and the feedback was amazing because they did dip and cheers those kind of banks, and the feedbacks were just like were amazing, and we had a very huge adoptions, and we were very happy to be helping everyone in the situation like that. So it was a very good feedback from the population.
This is excellent. Thank you so much, Pedro. Vinay or Shashank, if any last comments from your side, or we can move to the closing session.
Yeah, nothing more to add from my side. Shashank has been rolling out one product every month in pandemic, so maybe he can this.
I'll simply add that, we have already seen a lot of momentum on offline to online movement, and I think the whole progress has, I mean, the whole this thing has got compressed, right? So the years of behavior change has suddenly been compressed into months, and we are seeing a whole new demography, a whole new population coming online. And while their normal lives have been disrupted because of the pandemic that is there, they are we are seeing very good signs of them trying to use new age technology to kind of reorient themselves and try to rebuild their lives that is there, right? And hopefully we as a community, we as an ecosystem, have are trying to do our best to enable them as much as possible to cope up with the loss of livelihood in some sense, and other impacts that have been there due to the pandemic that is there. But also that this behavior change in some sense is permanent, and I think the businesses or the people who are really going to thrive in future in ecosystem are the ones who are adaptable to this change, and we should ensure that we are able to reach these people in these times of need to see that nobody is left behind while we are moving the country forward towards digitization.
Thank you so much, Shashank. Very true and extremely important. So thank you so much. Roberta, I think we can move to the closing session. So I'll request you first to give your remarks, and then I'll move on to mine.
Thank you very much, Shruti. I really learned a lot because I'm not from the technology background. So I keep learning with you all every time we have a webinar. And I believe that if we had someone just sleeping for 2-3 years and waking up now, seeing all this revolution you are doing, because you are the guys that are actually ahead of this, this person would be amazed. Fortunately, life would be much easier for him or her because you are going to this direction. And I do hope all this progress, all these movements really take on board everybody, and as you said, leave no one behind, because this is the opportunity we have to correct mistakes or flaws from the past and actually make a significant impact in our societies. I hope India and Brazil can be ahead of this movement and make a difference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roberta. Esteemed panelists, Pedro, Vinay, Shashank, Dr. André, thank you so much for joining us today. Distinguished delegates, it's been an extremely comprehensive and enlightening discussion. And I hope the 5-part webinar series of our forum have made you familiar with the increasing role Fintech is playing in both the countries, especially in shared areas of concern such as financial inclusion and economic empowerment of MSMEs. There were some great ideas that came out of today's session as well. The new technologies that are so important. Also the fact that, people need to be more adaptive. So there's clearly a lot to learn, and both countries are at the cusp of revolution when it comes to fintech, backed by the enabling policy environment that we're seeing, the inherent strengths, and some of the clear leaders who are represented today in the panel that we see. So both countries offer vast opportunities for companies in this sector, and I hope you will take these opportunities up. I wish to thank you all for your participation and time. And I would like to assure you of the highest level of support from Invest India, as well as the Brazilian Embassy in India. And we look forward to you reaching out to us so that we can support you. I would also like to draw your attention to the dedicated BFSI sector page that we have on the Invest India webpage, which covers all segments and has all the recent updates on the page, along with our contact information. Lastly, I wish to thank all my colleagues at Invest India as well as the Embassy who have made the sessions possible. Varun, Athar, Raghav, Agrim, Astha, Shivangi, Navya, Meher, Gautam, Vinil, Nidhi, Pedro, Claudia, and Roberta, and all the other teams who made all these webinars possible and for their unstinted support. Thank you, everyone. We really hope you have a great evening and look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.